for taking the time and sort of coming to see us today. I'm really, really excited to speak to you guys and to be here at D&AD. So thank you, everyone, the organizers and everyone for putting this together. I've got a tendency to mumble when I speak, so I'm going to try and speak really, really slowly. And if you see that you don't understand me, just wave at me and stop me, because otherwise I'll just ramble on. As Chris said, so my name is Andrea Moccia. I am the senior producer at Secret Cinema. I've been a producer at Secret Cinema for the past 4 years, and I've produced Blade Runner, Moulin Rouge, Doctor Strangelove, and the upcoming James Bond for Secret Cinema. So today I'm just going to go through a little bit about what immersive experiences are, the history of immersive experiences, and the future, specifically trying to focus on immersive theater, because that's what I do and that's what I know. So starting from sort of the past and going all the way into the future. Who has been to an immersive show before? An immersive theater show, an immersive dining experience? Great. Do you like it? Yes? No? Yeah? Meh. On the fence. Which ones? Anyone want to shout out a couple? Star Wars. Yay! Good. That's easy. Makes my life a lot easier. Sorry? Did I guard? Okay. Amazing. Anyone else? No? Yumi Bum Bum Train. Love Yumi Bum Bum Train. Great. So lots of people who are familiar with what immersive is in the world, which really makes my life a lot easier. So going to speak a little bit about Secret Cinema and what we do. So Secret Cinema was started 11 years ago by a man called Fabian Rigel. Fabian basically had this vision obsession with how do we get audiences to come see films or come to experiences that they wouldn't necessarily go to otherwise. So Future Shorts started about 14 years ago, and Future Shorts is an international short film festival which happens in over 100 cities around the world, where independent organizers buy a film program and then they put together their own Future Shorts program. From there, it evolved into how do we get people to see films which they wouldn't necessarily normally go see. And so the first Secret Cinema started with Paranoid Park. It was about 100 people in a small skate park in East London. I decided to pick this image because Moulin Rouge was a particularly important show for me. It was the second show that I've produced, and it was an absolute explosion of colors and love, and I'm just incredibly proud of this show. So what we did with Moulin Rouge was we decided to create the Society of Love. We decided to stage Moulin Rouge short after the Brexit vote, short after Trump got elected, so we wanted to create something really beautiful and positive, and we wanted to create a society where everyone could come and feel included, so we created the Society of Love. There was circa 1,000 audience members a night, and each one of them got given an individual character, an individual person, and their identity was based around real people who lived in Montmartre in 1899. So we sent a team of researchers to Paris, to the mayor's office in Paris, and they had to go and take down the names of everyone who lived in the borough back in early 1900s. What we then did is we mapped all these names on a massive wall and sort of joined them up and sort of started creating relationships. So who's the mother of who's the lover of who. And what happened is that you could be at the bar ordering an absinthe, and you might be chatting to the person next to you, and you discover that they're your lover. We then created a physical environment for everyone to sort of come play and live out their characters in. So the show was set in Montmartre in 1899. It was set in sort of 3 different rooms. We created the seedy streets of Montmartre with lots of sort of ladies of the night and thieves and pickpocketers. And then we created a large food hall and the Moulin Rouge itself, which is what you see here. So what is immersive theater? There's lots of things that are being called immersive nowadays. There's immersive art, immersive VR, immersive exhibitions, theater, and we'll go through a little bit of the ones that are around in a second. But immersive theater in particular, I think, has to have certain characteristic. I think the audience in some way needs to play a role. Whether it's sort of a passive role, so much like Punch Drunk, where you wear a mask and you just go around the space and observe with limited interaction, or whether you're actually actively interacting with characters and actors. The audience should be allowed to roam and explore different performance spaces and different worlds. Whether they're ushered or sort of free roaming, that doesn't really matter. But the important thing is that the lines between performers and audiences blur. And that is really, really beautiful about what, one of the things that happens when you come to Secret Cinema events is that you don't actually know who is a performer and who is an audience member. Audience members are asked to come in costume, in character, and everyone has a persona. This was a show we did in an abandoned printing press, which is now the Printworks Club in Canada Water. And when we took over the space, the building was absolutely not suited to sort of having audience members in it. We staged 3 productions in it. We staged 28 Days Later, Doctor Strangelove, and Star Wars. And in particularly, with 28 Days Later, it was a particularly terrifying experience. So we created this massive rat run in the middle of this incredibly tricky, from a health and safety perspective, space, where 50 audience members at a time would go through a track. And it was slightly different from the usual Secret Cinema experience in that it wasn't a free roaming experience. It was a very, very guided, performance. Audience members were chased in this building, covered in blood. Actors would attack them pretending to be zombies, and then they would all end up in a blood rave, and then would have to watch, it sounds absurd, I know, and have to watch the film on 1,000 hospital beds, which we laid out with 16 screens on the ceiling. And sort of explaining it like this, you sort of think, you have to have the questions, why do people put themselves through things like this? I mean, it sounds horrible. I would never go to anything like this, but actually it's quite fun and it's quite safe. I think the main reasons why people go to immersive shows and why immersive performances are becoming such a big thing and growing and growing and growing are sort of four or five main reasons. So the first is a longing for escape. We want to escape our world. We want to escape our sort of daily routines. And by attending immersive shows, we give you the opportunity to do just that. We take your phones away, and we create a safe space for you to play in. It's really quite interesting what happens when you create an event and then take people's phones away. And people can now sort of play and have fun without the constant fear of ending up on Instagram or social media, on Twitter, or sort of being caught doing something embarrassing. So it really, really frees you. The second is interaction. Again, the screens. We're constantly interacting more with the screens than with people around us. What we do at Secret Cinema by taking your phones away is we are forcing you to interact with people. All of a sudden, you see people who are waiting at the bar, waiting for their gin and tonic, hopefully not too long. And instead of checking their phones, they start chatting to the person next to them. And that creates a beautiful shared experience. The third is sort of going back to this playfulness that we had as kids and that we sort of lose naturally as you grow. And the fourth is to get a sense of excitement. And the fifth is in exploring new spaces. So whenever we do these shows, we don't tend to do them in traditional or conventional venues. We have done, and these shows are just as important as the shows that we do in non-conventional spaces. But people love to sort of go and explore venues and spaces that they wouldn't necessarily see or have a chance to see at any other point. Because audiences love immersive experiences so much, the term is now being used in sort of lots of different contexts and lots of different ways. Everything seems to be immersive. The other day I was in Shanghai, and Starbucks is an immersive coffee experience. It's not a coffee shop, which I found quite interesting. There's lots of great stuff. There's lots of really, really good stuff. For example, I went to see Counting Sheep at the Vaults, which is a beautiful piece of political immersive theater based around the 2014 Kiev uprising by a fantastic company called Belarus Free Theater. Absolutely go and see it if you get a chance to. For example, like Dr. Leon, which is a one-on-one experience, which actually happens in Brick Lane, simulating a brain surgery for audience members who might enjoy that. But there's also a lot of, because the industry is quite new, there's also a lot of bad practices in the industry. People who organize immersive events don't necessarily understand the intricacies and complexities that go that lie behind these sort of shows. And what we and especially I think we need to pay particular attention. We need to be particularly careful in making sure that the performers and yet the actors who play in our worlds are being taken care of. There's been recently an article on The Stage by Lynn Gardner about the need to talk about the safety of performance in immersive theaters. By letting audience members loose in sort of these worlds, you know, they might have a drink. People tend to behave in ways in which they normally wouldn't behave in their everyday life and take liberties which they wouldn't with other people. So harassment is a big topic and one that producers out there absolutely need to make sure that they've got sort of safety procedures and barriers in place to protect their performers and actors. I've sort of gone all over the place, but sort of talking about the different kind of immersive experiences that there are out there. This is the Tank Museum in Shanghai, which is an immersive sort of art exhibition space that they've just opened inside a gas tank. Immersive concerts. This is an immersive dining experience by Darling and Edge at the Vaults. Immersive dining experiences are extremely popular at the moment. Immersive VR. And this is the Musée de Lumière in Paris, which is a Klimt exhibition, which is sort of you get to live in the space. This is 28 Days Later. I was saying it earlier. It's blocked. So there are different types of immersive theater. So the definition of immersive is quite fluid, and even within sort of immersive theater, there's a wide range of different types of immersive theater that you could go see, ranging from the traditional immersive theater with productions like Soldier of Orange. Soldier of Orange is a production by a Dutch company, which is actually coming to London in the next couple of years. Where audience members sit at the center of a theater, which is in an abandoned World War II hangar on the outskirts of Amsterdam. The audience are sitting in their seat, and as the scenes play along, rather than the stage moving, the seats actually turn around, swivel, and move, so that what this allows you to do is create a much bigger theater. So there's a scene which is beautiful in which they open up the whole space. I'm not going to spoil it because it's coming to London. But this is an example of a more traditional type of immersive performance in which the audience have a passive role, sitting down, experiencing the story, but they are sort of surrounded by the world itself. The Jungle is a sort of halfway house in my mind. This is a beautiful piece of theater that was on at the National, which was based around the lives of refugees living in the jungle camp in Calais, in France. It's currently playing in San Francisco. And this is a sort of halfway house where audience members were cued to interact at some points. They participated in a meal and a dinner, but they're still sort of quite passively watching the performance. To the sort of more interactive, free-roaming, such as Punch Drunk. This is a picture of Drowned Man, which was their show in Paddington a few years ago. To Secret Cinema, which I think is all the way at the other end of the spectrum, in which audience members there is no barrier between the audience members and the actors. The actors encourage you to participate. You have to come in costume. You have to take on a persona. So yeah, I think we're definitely at one end of that. I'm going to skip this bit. This again is 28 Days Later. This is another great company which is doing an immersive Gatsby show at the moment. And if it's still playing, and it's now opening up all over the world in Belgium, and definitely I would advise to go see it. this seems like a bit of a random slide, but I was trying to research the history of immersive shows, and lots of people say that immersive started sort of in the 19th century with call and responses in theater. So think about the Globe and the way that audience members shouted and used to get responses from actors in these performances. But actually, you can trace immersive performances all the way back to ancient times. These massive religious festivals where people wore a mask, took part in rituals and performances. Effectively, they're what festivals and immersive experiences have become. These are just some other shows. This is War of the Worlds, which is coming up. It's opening in a few weeks. It's an AR experience, so here it's a different type of immersive where VR is being used in conjunction with traditional performance and traditional theater. It's by a company called ... who've done Somni last year, which was an experience trying to put audience members through the experience of lucid dreaming. And again, this is simply to show how many different kinds of immersive performances out there. There isn't really a unified view over what immersive is nowadays. And I think this is one of the problems sort of facing the future of immersive performances. But what is the future of immersive world? So we're currently living in really what is the golden age of immersive entertainment. There's loads of money being invested in right now into bespoke immersive theater spaces, in bringing immersive performances abroad, and developing touring models. And I think these will only continue to grow. As the world is becoming ever more digitalized, as experiences sort of that put human interaction at their forefront are disappearing, I think immersive will become a really, really important player within the arts. There's, for example, an immersive theater space opening in central London called Space 18. They've come on New Oxford Street, where they've converted 35 floors and 7 buildings and 25,000 square feet into a bespoke immersive theater venue. The first of its kind, certainly in the UK. Again, there's loads of money being put into bringing productions international. Secret Cinema will launch abroad in the next couple of years. There will be big announcements coming soon. So Punch Drunk has opened in Shanghai and is opening in other territories as well in the US. Alice Underground has opened in China as well. So there's a real craving for immersive experiences all over the world. If these things work in London, there's no reason why they shouldn't work everywhere else, unless Londoners are a special breed of people, which we are. But hopefully, these will keep on growing. Also, the industry is starting to get organized. There was the second Immersive Design Summit in San Francisco, organized this year. So it's an art form which is finally starting to become formalized, and it's finally started to get recognized and understood by unions and industry bodies. We're starting to work very closely with Equity in setting up industry guidelines and standards that would apply to immersive companies around the UK, which is a massive leap forward in terms of the way we work with unions and agreeing contracts and agreeing sort of standards for the well-being of our performers. However, there are sort of some big issues, as I mentioned before, with the current growth. The industry is growing too fast. And this lack of industry-wide standards is actually causing massive issues for performers who are involved. I've been to some shows which, as I said, have been fantastic. I've been to other shows which, frankly, have been irresponsible. And if I was a performer working in those conditions, I would absolutely rebel and leave, probably. So one of the threats is sort of growing too fast. One of the other threats, I think, is Brexit. It's not a popular topic, but we need to speak about what effect Brexit will have within the arts industry, the barriers that will be put in front of artists and companies in terms of touring, but also in terms of availability of performers. I think it will be really, really problematic. Another massive issue, as I mentioned earlier, immersive performances historically have thrived and survived in non-traditional spaces, in large warehouses, in abandoned printing presses, in abandoned skate parks, and all of these spaces are quickly disappearing. They're all being turned into luxury flats. So even spaces that we hold as Serious Cinema, and that we're quite a big company. We've got hundreds of thousands of audience members attending these shows. We can't afford to pay commercial rents on properties. And so the way we work is we work in meanwhile spaces that have been bought by landlords who are waiting for permissions or planning approval to be turned into luxury flats. And we sort of go in the period in between in which they've got nothing to do. But as these spaces disappear, it will be harder and harder, especially for smaller companies, to be able to put on shows at a sort of reasonable cost. And it's not just unconventional venues that are disappearing, but there's a massive issue right now with venues all over London disappearing. So this is Coco in Camden, a historical venue. It's shutting down. The Coronet, again, very historical venue in Elephant and Castle, shut down. It's been empty for at least a couple of years and will be empty at least for another couple of years until the developers get permission to knock it down and turn it into flats. And with the venues disappearing, there's also rehearsal spaces that are disappearing, casting spaces. It's becoming really difficult for small companies to find anywhere to be able to operate in London. And if London wants to be at the forefront of this, of the arts world, as it has been and as it should be, everyone needs to make, especially developers and local councils, need to make a considerable amount of effort in making sure that these spaces are salvaged. I think that's it from me. Thank you very much. Hopefully that was all right.